105.1 FM. This is Future Radio. Now, yesterday I met Roy Waller, who's the Norwich City commentator and great Norwich City fan, and I had quite a chat with Roy, and I started asking him, first of all, how his book was going.
Pretty good, actually. I did have the Evening News contact me and said I got a fact wrong. It wasn't me, it was the publishers, sorry. I didn't put in the factual stuff, they did, and they put their hands up and said, yes, it was us, we apologise. But yeah, most people have said the same thing to me. They picked it up, started to read it and couldn't put it down, which is a compliment, which I thank people for, and it's doing very well. They reprinted, they've sent out more copies to the outlying districts. Funny enough, I've sold more in the county I have in Norwich, which is strange, but I'm doing some more book signings very shortly in King's Lynn, Holt, Lowestoft, Great Yarmouth, Norwich again, so it will go well. And I was just flattered that they asked me to do it. I didn't say I wanted it. They rang me up and said, have you ever written a book? No, I haven't, but I can't write. I can speak. They said, well, don't worry, you speak it, we'll write it. So that's what's happened.
Great, I must get you to sign this one before you go. Actually, that can go as a prize out for us. I like the message you've got in the book, that you shouldn't be afraid of anything. You should, if you're given the opportunity, you should go for it. Is that how you've lived your life in your career?
I've lived my life, yeah, because, as I say in the book, and when I go out and give talks to people, particularly youngsters, and I always say to them, if asked to do anything, accept it, worry about it, do it. Having done it, the fair goes. Now, a couple of examples was one I compared at the Theatre Royal in Norwich. Never done it before. I was asked by the late Dick Condon. I walked on stage, 1,300 people. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing here? But I did it, and then moved on because the fair had gone. And I stood in front of 45,000 people at a football game to entertain them. What? I messed myself before I went on, but having did it, I can now do it because the fair goes. And that, I think life is a bit like that. Those who don't take that opportunity to take advantage of things will miss out. There's no doubt about it. And you speak to my mother will say she could never imagine me standing in front of 1,300 people entertaining them. She's, no, that's not my Roy. He's too shy. And off the microphone I am. Excuse me.
As a commentator, did you model yourself on anybody particular?
No.
Just completely be yourself?
Well, there's only one me. I know there is John Watson, there's Barry Davis, and therefore there's them. Now, when I came to the BBC, they asked me to sit in and do other people's programmes. I couldn't be them, I could be me. And that's what I tell youngsters these days, be yourself, forget anybody else, you don't want to be anybody else, because there is that person. So commentating, I use my style, I'll never change it. Yes, I get excited. My father, God bless him, used to say, oh, I have to turn you off, you get me too excited. And my mother knows from the tone of my voice if Norwich are winning or losing. Now, that's the way I do it. I try and instill a bit of excitement, set the scene, paint pictures. That's so important.
Have you got any favourite commentary moments from your own career?
Oh, many, I suppose. People always remember the things you say and shouldn't. Like, he just shot the bar over the ball, the referee's about to blow his watch. And the classic one was when a spectator ran on the pitch, and I said, oh, this is ridiculous, there's a player on the pitch. And people remember those. But yeah, you do, because you're speaking so fast and trying to paint pictures at the same time, sometimes the words come out wrong. Sometimes that always happens because you're going at such a pace, but you get over it and you laugh about it.
You have a good chemistry with Neil Adams. Do you stay in contact with Matt Jackson or Keith O'Neill?
Yeah, we saw Matt when we went and played Wigan, and sat in the press room with Matt and had a long conversation. Great guy. Keith O'Neill not so much because he's moved clubs and been injured sadly. But with Neil, I worried about dealing with a footballer who's as articulate as Neil, because he knows the game inside, and I use him to give me that information. And indeed, probably it's a question of I bring out the best of him and him in me. We don't particularly socialise after the game. What I'm saying is that in between games, we might play golf now and again together, but that's about it. But he knows what to expect, and I have to say to him, look, if the game starts to get interesting when you're talking, you stop, and I take it up from there. And vice versa, I have to pause, let him get in and give a point.
Because going back, you mentioned in your book about Keith O'Neill and the colourful language he used. Have you ever been tempted just to forget your commentating and shout at the ref, shout at the manager, shout at the players?
Well, I do this. I'm very critical of of things that happen, and I think that's only right. I remember, I think I mentioned in the book about certain managers who've said to me, we didn't like what you said about our players. Sorry, but that's how I see it. It's no good me telling people at home untruths. If they're playing badly, they're playing badly. If they're playing good, they're playing good. And I have to reflect that. And I'll have a go at referees. I wouldn't want to do the job for the world. No way would I want to be a referee. But they take the job on and have to be criticised. I'm criticised as a commentator, as a presenter. I don't like it. I get hurt when I get criticism, but you have to accept it in the end. And I do it in a way. Oh, referee, come on, what are you doing? That should have been a free kick.
I guess you can shout louder by just talking into your microphone, telling many people about it, rather than just shouting at the ref, as the rest of us have to do.
Yeah, it's a good point. I had to go and talk to the referees' assessors. Now, this was something completely free, and it was in my own time. I drove down there, and I stood up and said a few words, and then they hammered me. They slaughtered me about, oh, you don't get this right, you don't get that right, and how dare you criticise referees and so on. In the end, I said, gentlemen, I came here tonight, free of charge, in my own time, just to talk to you. You have really slaughtered me. I didn't come here for that. And they got up and went to a buffet and didn't ask me.
Quite offensive.
Yeah, I found that very rude, and I went home and I said never again. And I wrote to them and said I didn't come here to expect that behaviour.
Because you had a couple of run-ins with Gary Megson, famously in your book. Were there any visiting managers that you didn't like or didn't like you?
I fell out with Alex Ferguson. I remember asking him when Norwich were in the Premiership and before, and my first question to him, he said, what the FNL is that, and walked away. I just felt, as a manager, you have the right to ask the question.
Because you're in good company there. I think he's done similar things to John Watson as well.
And Alan Green of Radio 5, who they don't like each other and they don't talk.
So I read Alan Green's book. It's quite interesting.
Yeah. But I mean, you do run foul of managers who perhaps... I remember Ken Brown, bless him, came across the training ground and said, I heard you last Saturday, you said so-and-so. He didn't hear me last Saturday because he was the manager. He couldn't hear me, somebody else did, and he said, you said so-and-so, why? I said, well, excuse me, it wasn't me, it was in fact Keith Skipper, who used to be with me alongside. Right. I'd never said it, and he got the wrong end of the stick because somebody had heard it. Now, you have to remember that footballers' wives and girlfriends listen to the away commentaries, and they might say, oh, he criticised you tonight. Well, sorry, footballers are sensitive. Neil Adams will tell you that. They don't like to be criticised. But they're there. They're in it. I always say football is like theatre. You have your stage, which is the ground. You have your players and the actors. They're the players. And you have the crowd, your audience. Now, if I go to the theatre and see something I don't like and I pay good money, I have the right to say, that was rubbish. Or a film, that was rubbish. Now, they have exactly the same right to say what they've seen. It's just, as I say, like theatre, and they have the right to say that wasn't good.
Talking about managers, we've lost to Brian Clough and Bill Nicholson from another era recently. Who do you think was the greatest Norwich City manager?
That's a difficult one. Archie McCauley was successful, wasn't he? There's been some good managers over the years, and I wouldn't like to separate all of them, to be honest, because I just felt they all contributed their part to Norwich City history. Some were good, some were very good. But when you look back, you think of some of the managers we've had have been excellent. Even looking at managers have been ruthless. Ron Saunders, for instance, he did get the best out of players, one has to say, by his wonderful methods that you probably wouldn't adopt today, because it's all changed. There's fitness regime, there's diets and so on, and it's a completely different world. When players in the past would turn up on cycles with engines in the wheel, not anymore. You've got to set aside an area where all the Jags and the BMWs can be put in.
Do you hanker after the old days? These days now we have all this money being paid to the players. We've got food fights in the trouble in the tunnel. We've got problems from different players. Do you think perhaps the Ron Saunders would be successful in this day and age?
I don't look back. I really don't. I think the best thing they ever did is put all-seater stadiums in. If that's going to save lives, who cares that people have got to sit down?
I think that it's better atmosphere at Carrow Road since all-seaters.
I mean, they don't sit in the Barclays, sadly. They still stand. But I think if it saves lives, they've done well. I don't think that the past managers would be able to probably exist in today's Premiership, because it's another world that the managers spend so much time doing other things. And then, if you remember, in the old days, it was a question, the manager would come in, take the train in, probably just go off, sign a few letters and go home. That was it. He never had to do anything else. Nowadays, they're embroiled in so much more off the pitch that it's a full-time job, and as much that they're there probably from, and some managers are there from probably 8 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night.
And your favourite player was Martin Peters. That surprised me.
Well, I have to say, when he came to Norwich and put on that shirt, I thought, I can understand why they said he was years ahead of his time. The guy had vision, the guy had the ability to read a game, he was in the right place at the right time. Sometimes the passing, that it would make him look silly, the other players didn't know what he was going to do because it was so intelligent. And I just felt it was a privilege to see that man in Norwich City shirt. Having said that, Kevin Bond, everybody said he'd never make a footballer. But my goodness, he turned into a great fullback, shed a few of the pounds because it was his puppy weight, and he developed into a fine fullback. And I just felt that proves everybody wrong.
Now, losing bets the last couple of years has seen you have to wear an Ipswich Town shirt to work and streak around the city centre naked, albeit at 4 o'clock in the morning. Have you got any bets planned for this year, or are you sort of keeping clear of that now?
Yeah, I've learnt my lesson, really. That was the most worrying time I've ever had of wearing this Ipswich shirt. I was booed in the street, shouted at, abuse, and I really did suffer. I had to go to Carrow Road in it, of course, and therefore you took a lot of stick as well. I wouldn't want to go through that again.
Who was that bet with?
Kevin Upstairs, an Ipswich Town
yes.
supporter.
Right.
He said to me, if Norwich win, he said, I'll wear a yellow and green shirt for a week. I said, okay, I'll wear an Ipswich shirt if Ipswich win. Of course, it happened.
I'm sure we can get him back at some point.
I have since then.
Division 1, aren't they? So, final question to you is, what's your gut feeling how this season's going to end up?
I think we'll stay up. I really believe that things will turn around and come right. They need a striker, of course they do. But who doesn't? And what side was going to give you a striker who's scoring goals? Nobody, are they? In the right minds. If they're scoring goals, they'll hang on to them. But Nigel is pretty good in the transfer market. One or two perhaps haven't paid off for him and he's moved them on, but happens with any manager. So I think if we can prove in scoring goals, there's no reason why Norwich can't stay in the Premiership. They've not been beaten 6-7-0. It's the odd goal. If they were losing 6-7-0, I'd say there's something wrong. There isn't. They're fighters, they're doing well, they need the luck, and they just need the goals.
Great, Roy. Thank you very much.
This is the future. Norwich's Future 105.1.
Yeah, big thank you there to Roy Waller. Most kind of him to give us the time there yesterday.